Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be with you today. I'm Dr. Ann, and we're talking about leadership in terms of personal characteristics, styles of leadership, and models. So let's get started. First of all, what's leadership? Well, we think we know this, right? But do we really? There are two very basic definitions that we all know well, either the action of leading a group of people or an organization, or for that matter, a government, or the state or position of being a leader. But there are a few more. The art of motivating a group of people to act toward a common goal. I rather like that one. A process of social influence, which maximizes the efforts of others toward goal achievement. Sounds like empowerment. Or seeing how things can be improved and rallying people to move forward toward that better vision. So a bit of expansion on the topic. Here's my favorite model for leadership. There are three basic domains. One is the operational domain. That's just the functioning as a leader. Another is the strategic domain, which is putting the plans together, setting the strategy overall, and knowing how to get to the results that you want in the operational domain. The third domain is interpersonal. And without relationships of one sort or another, the other two don't work. So let's look at this a little more carefully. Strategic, you're setting the strategic direction overall. When that interacts with delivering results or operational, the overlap is planning and organizing. When the strategic domain overlaps with the interpersonal or building relationships, you have creating alignment, which doesn't mean that everyone agrees, but it means that they're working together toward a common goal. Like bees in a hive, where each one has her individual function, but ultimately they work together. And when the operational or functional domain and the interpersonal or relationship domain cross over, we have teamwork, team building and teamwork. We work on relationships in order to get results. In the midst of all of these domains or spheres, we have leadership. My best image for that. For this, we often think leadership means being very strong, very powerful. Well, power within maybe. You notice her arms are down, she's just self-confident. But those arms behind her are the power within, which is quite different from power over other people. So we'll be looking at that more in a minute. There are a number of elements of leadership. Many of these may be well known to you. First of all, vision. If you can't look toward the future and see an idea of where you want to go and improve and change, you have no business being a leader. You could be a boss, that's the day-to-day, but not leadership. Motivation of yourself and of others. Service. A lot of people don't want to associate this with leadership, but the leader is in service to the organization, to the team, to the business, and so on, to the nation. Empathy. Well, we, from time to time, especially in the political sphere, we have leaders who don't seem to have empathy, or at least that's how it looks from our perspective. But without empathy, you can't be a true leader. You have to be able to have a feeling of what other people are experiencing. Creativity. Creativity is not only creating new things, it's also problem solving. So we do that on a daily basis as leaders. Thoroughness. We must be very thorough. We must cover everything. We must make sure everything gets done, not necessarily by us. We can delegate, but ultimately as a leader, you have to make sure that everything gets taken care of. Guidance. That doesn't mean telling people what to do. It means providing support, supervision as necessary, but ensuring that your team, your members, your citizens know where you're heading, that you know how to get there, and that you can take them along and help and support them. Team building. If you don't know how to build relationships well and how to build teams, which is groups of relationships with a common goal, then again, you have no business being a leader, because that's essential. Risk taking. If you by nature are risk averse, as we say. If you don't like taking risk, again, not really leadership potential. Because as a leader, in order to have vision, in order to create change, in order to deal with problems, you often have to take risk and improvement. To stay same is also not leadership. Again, that's management. That's being a boss. That's maintaining by definition. But to continually strive for improvement, not perfection, but improvement of yourself as well as whatever or whomever you are leading, that is part of the elements of leadership. It can also look like this. We have some of those that we just discussed. We have vision, a compelling vision for the future, out of the box thinking. We have action, of course, which includes managing uncertainty and change. Never before are we in such a period of that as we are now. And not everyone, in fact, humans are not so well equipped to deal with uncertainty or to embrace change. So as a leader, we need to know how not only to manage that and all of those feelings within ourselves, but in our teams and our members as well. Impact, of course, we want to have some impact. This is about inspiring others. This is empowerment. Impact is to help others to find their potential and their talent with a shared sense of purpose and a learning culture, which you as a leader must cultivate. Everyone is in this to learn together and to learn from each other. Connection is not only about relationships, it's about embracing diversity and creating unity while leveraging the much broader perspective you have when you have diversity. You don't want everybody thinking alike, but you don't want them to feel separate from each other either, and that's a balance. And drive. So to have the initiative to pursue those goals, here it says career goals, we're talking about organizational goals. And also an appetite for feedback. A lot of leaders don't really welcome feedback so easily. They don't really want constructive criticism because they are confidently right. That's a dangerous position to be in. We have to also be able to accept feedback and really embrace it from all those around us. Within this color circle on the left, we have performance, we have potential, those are obvious, and we also have derailers, or as these days is more typical, we have deconstruction or disruption. So things will come along to throw you off, and you have to deal with that equally to performance and potential. Around all of that, you have the context, which is our affiliate, our overall organization. Characteristics of a leader, going a little further, self-awareness and self-management. This is too often called emotional intelligence or emotional quotient, but really, going back to Socrates, as well as many Eastern philosophers, knowing yourself is essential to leadership. Knowing yourself very well, your strengths and your weaknesses, what will challenge you, what will trigger you in the people around you. And self-management, being able to manage your own feelings, being able to not react to people, but not to suppress your feelings either, to recognize them and to handle them appropriately. Strategic thinking and action, of course. We need the ability to think strategically as a leader. Effective communication. We just recently had another webinar on that topic. You might want to check that out. Accountability and responsibility. Ultimately, the leader is responsible and accountable. And so we need to help ensure that those around us, because we don't want to do everything ourselves, we want to delegate, but we need to support them and guide them and help ensure their success. Their success is our success. Clear vision, goals, and the path to achievement. And you need to be able to express this, which goes back to effective communication. You need to have a vision, first of all. It needs to be very clear, not muddy. You need to know how to get there. This is goals and objectives, right? But also, you need to be able to show that to others as well as steadily work toward it. And it needs to be a shared vision. As a leader, maybe you're introducing some aspects of that vision. That's also your job. But it can't be your vision as an individual. It has to be the shared vision of the team or the organization in this case. To manage complexity. We're not all good at that. As women, we have some advantages for multitasking, but managing complexity really means handling a number of things at a time or things that just aren't clear, problematic people, situations that fall apart, global crises, not always easy. Fostering creativity and innovation, we want to continually not only come up with that ourselves, but to inspire it in our members, to have new ideas and not just get shot down for them. We tried that already. That doesn't quite work because, no, entertain it, unless it's really a disastrous idea, and then gently explain why. But encourage the creativity and the innovation in your members. And of course, team building and teamwork. The one who says, because I say so, because I'm president, because I'm leader, because I'm parent, the discussion is already over. And that's an authoritarian way of handling leadership. We'll look at that again in a minute. But it's not true leadership. So team building and teamwork. Could look like this, especially in our BPW organization. First of all, leading yourself. Well, that's self-management, but it's also contributing. So leading yourself is really having the motivation to get involved with BPW Club, to volunteer, to chair a committee or a task force. Show up. Leading others might be being in the executive or a chair of one of those other entities of the club, so that you're leading the club. Leading managers or the leader of leaders is probably federation level that we're talking about. Leading divisions could apply to our regional level. And then, of course, leading the organization to our international entity. Leadership. Talk about styles. Styles are a balancing of two things, the authority of the leader from low to high, and the autonomy or independence of the team. And it's a balancing act between those two. At times, you will need high authority of the leader and low independence of the team. That's controlling. That's not really good leadership. If it's an emergency, it calls for one person acting. But that's about the only time. If you have very low authority as a leader and low autonomy of a team, well, you're just advising people. That's like generally being an advice giver, but not really a leader. And they're not that active. So as the autonomy of the team goes up, if they have a very high degree of independence with a low level of leadership style, we have participatory leadership. That's on the far right in the bottom. And so that means really the leader is acting with the team as a member of the team. And all of these styles have different applications in different situations. Knowing how to apply it is really the ultimate beauty and gold of leadership. You've hit the sweet spot in that case. Also, the sweet spot, the ideal of the balance of these two at the bottom of this screen is high team autonomy. You want your team to ultimately, you have to grow them into this point a lot of times. You want them to have a great degree of independence. You want to delegate to a team of experts and have them be able to each do their role. And medium authority of the leader. You don't want to have no authority because then you're also not supporting your team. You're not guiding your team in any way. But you also don't want to go to high authority, which controls too much. And then it's very hard to actually empower your team because you've taken their power away if you hold all the power yourself. So the balance could be medium, but really for the effective team, you want high team independence and medium authority of the leader. High authority of the leader, low team autonomy, you're just dictating. High team autonomy, low authority of the leader, you're not leading. So there's the balance. And so then we have another way of looking at this with team performance and team development. Over time, both of these grow, and that's why we've got the chart as we do. We've got on the top leaders' style and leaders' focus. So when you just put a team together, it's very new. Creating a new team is the blue on the bottom left. You have the leader's style as steering. You're really directing at that point because the team isn't yet cohesive. And you're results oriented. And for a short-term project, you might stay there. If you need to get something done in 3 days and you ask 3 people to form a team and help you, it's not going to grow much beyond that level. Once the leader's style goes from steering or commanding to supporting, then stimulating, and then ultimately to synergizing. And the focus goes from a results orientation, which of course we always want results, through teamwork and strengths to alignment. Again, that word alignment, which means in line with, which does not mean 100% agreement. It means we have a shared vision. We know how to work together to get there. That's the synergizing. So that's ultimately the best working team. But we have to grow it from point one to point whatever that ultimate is. Again, leadership. Finally, let's look at some models. Well, these 5 are the most typical models of leadership, and several of them relate to other models, which we'll see on a subsequent chart. First of all, authentic leadership. Very similar to what's often talked about today as transformational. Generally, authenticity means you are genuine, you are sincere, where you are, who you are is very clear. You're an open book, and people know where they stand with you. And that's a true form of leadership. Your words and deeds are credible, and you are trustworthy because there's nothing hidden, nothing secretive. You're not holding all the power. You're not keeping all the information. Everything is clear. So transparency is a big part of this. Self-awareness is the first part. That's the second line under authentic, if you're following along. Again, know yourself very well. Relational transparency, again, very clear in how you stand with others and what you expect of them and what they can expect of you. Balanced processing, the way that you handle everything is as fair and balanced as possible, and also in terms of balancing all the parts of the process. And an internalized moral perspective is, in other words, ethics. The second here is autocratic. There's a very limited use for this. It relates to bureaucratic. So the easier form of this is just to say bureaucratic, first of all, which is mostly governments. They're highly regulated. You really just have to follow the rules and patterns. There's not much room for innovation. And a lot of, especially governments, but a lot of businesses too, work more in this way. Autocratic, particularly, sometimes we refer to it as dictator-like, because autocratic is a very strong chain of command. And if you break that, you're in violation. You can never talk equally to people. You have to go up the chain. Very militaristic, actually. Very top-down power. All the power is at the top. Minimal collaboration, therefore, and no shared decision-making. Generally, when you need a quick decision, there's no time for collaboration, and typically that's a kind of emergency or a crisis. This is what you need to do. This is when the parent just says no as the child is about to run into the street. There's no negotiation or explaining there, but that's about the only type of situation where this is useful. Otherwise, you disempower your team, you build a great deal of resentment, you are not empowering anybody because you're holding all the power at the top, and it ultimately does not work. Not really leadership. Situational is a flexible model according to each team and project. If you know the team, the project, the situation very well, you can adapt your model to each situation. You also have to know different leadership styles very well. This is a high degree of skill. It's very motivating, it's very growth-oriented. It is not within the capability of a lot of leaders, at least not until they're pretty experienced in leadership. Laissez-faire, or laid back in common casual English, is a minimal supervision. That's kind of the opposite of autocratic, which holds all the power. It's very good for creativity and freedom when your team is very talented, very skilled, and all you need to do is just be the conductor of the orchestra, the one who just keeps everything going smoothly. This will work in that case. Otherwise, it's usually not enough supervision, and it requires that everybody on the team be highly self-motivated. So it's good in certain situations. Finally, we have shared leadership, which is also often called democratic and relates to servant leadership, in which case the leader takes a participatory or service orientation. Shared leadership is diverse power and authority, so really opposite to autocratic as well. It can withstand change. It's very flexible because it doesn't rely so heavily on one person. So even if the leader isn't there that day, the team continues to function exactly as they do. The leader provides leadership, but it's also shared and dispersed. And sometimes there isn't even an identified leader. It's a team that can collaborate well. But it is a style of leadership. In crisis or when a quick decision is made, this will feel like there's no leader. In an emergency situation, you need to have one person call emergency and the police and the fire or whoever is needed. If you tell the crowd to do it, it won't happen. This is a well-known rule. So when quick decision is required or in a time of crisis, true crisis, then this model wouldn't work. Looks like this. Those are all those models put together. And going into each of those a bit more, transformational is the one I'll talk more about in a moment. And it's really the ideal, although each of these have their place in certain situations. The one that wasn't mentioned here is number 2. These are not in order of priority or hierarchy. They're just numbered for the sake of a chart. Number 2, transactional leadership is about carrot and stick. You do for me, I'll do for you. Do this extra project, I'll give you a day off. This is very typical in management in businesses, although some of these other models are too. So it has some uses as well, usually somewhat limited uses. The others now we've talked about, except for one more. Number 8 on this chart, charismatic leadership. We've all known leaders who are very charismatic and everyone will follow them just forever. They love them and they're mesmerized by them. Well, Hitler was very charismatic too. He actually was. In his public speaking and so on, he could get crowds to follow him because he had this element we call charisma. Charisma by itself is a great element. Of course, in my example, you can see how dangerous that can be. But also in an organization, that's what we call cult of personality. And that means, for example, if we have an international president that's very charismatic and everyone loves her, maybe they don't actually pay so much attention to what she's doing or not doing because they're mesmerized, they're hypnotized by her charm. So they're not focused on content as much. This is one possible outcome. But even more, it might be great for those 3 years or 2 years or whatever, if we're talking about the club level. But when she leaves, the next one has big shoes to fill, but also the next one may even be a better leader. But if they're not as charismatic, it will be hard to gather the troops around them again, to motivate, to move into that sphere. Also, if there's any problem with a charismatic leader and she decides to leave the organization or to create a problem, then that can be incredibly disruptive. Charismatic leadership is based more on not just the personality, but the relationship. So it's too much on one personality rather than devoted to that affiliate or the organization on the whole. Can be problematic. So transformational leadership, I want to talk just a bit more about this particular model. And here's one way of looking at this in this image. This is a sort of pentagon in the middle there. It's 5-pronged. First of all, modeling the way. Don't tell people what to do. Show them by the way that you do. Don't do everything either, because that's disempowering, but you must be the model. And a quiet model works best. Don't tell them what to do, and don't tell them you're doing it. Look at me, aren't I great? Also doesn't work. Just do it and invite them to join you. And encouraging the heart. Often in leadership, even we as women who are more relationally and emotionally oriented, by and large, we're not all exactly the same, but generally and by our biology, we are more in that direction. But we often in leadership try to divorce ourselves from the emotions. Now, we never want to lead with feelings or who we like better than who else we like, because that's also really not good leadership. But we have to consider relationships, first of all, are key to teams and teamwork. But also we have to consider the feelings of others, that's empathy. A number of qualities we have already talked about fall into this category, encouraging the heart, as well as passion. If you're driven by your passions of what you're really excited about, and you invite others to be driven by their passions for the organization and for what they'd like to help build, that's another good and transformational form of leadership, which flows into the next one, inspiring a shared vision. Again, shared vision, it's very important. So we share the BPW vision, although we're not always 100% clear what that is. Yes, we have a mission statement, No, not everyone is so aware of that. But our vision, our shared vision, goes beyond that mission statement as well. So we need to be clear about and have a shared vision. And that can also morph and change, not outside of the BPW framework, but each affiliate, if you're the leader of a club or a federation, may have another part to that vision, may have a vision for this particular term, may have something that fits your situation locally or nationally. It must be shared, and you must be able to give that inspiration. Again, transformation. Enabling others to act. That's not requiring them to act. It is motivating, but it's also enabling, which means you help to create the way. So I'm very big on youth leadership. And I have always told younger people who maybe have less experience, a lot to offer, but maybe just fewer years of experience, that I or someone else can work with them as a silent mentor, which just means they have a place to go to ask their questions. They can always come to someone who's working with them to help ensure their success on their own terms and not being told what to do. They're just having their questions answered as a form of support. That's enabling others to act. And challenging the process. Don't just accept it. Status quo, this is the way we've always done it. I stopped listening at that point. Not challenge in terms of always having to do things differently or to break the mold, but challenge because it may have been fine for the first 50 years or the first 80 years, but it may not fit today's situation. And it may not fit my club or my federation quite so well. Now, we have to stay within BPW governance overall, of course, but we must continually challenge the process, and we're also challenging to grow, challenging for transformation. This model can also be seen like this. At the core are relationships, building those very good, not just she's my friend, but good working relationships, forming teams, committees, task forces, working well together, bees in a hive. From that come our roles. From those roles come our responsibilities, and from those responsibilities we have results. And at the core we come back to relationships. BPW, together we lead. Whatever your model, whatever your style, some are much better than others for our purposes. I've gone through that now. Whatever your characteristics, there are some that are essential to leaders. I've gone through that with you. But ultimately, we're an organization of leaders. Now, some don't want those leadership positions, but we all come to BPW because we are already empowered to a degree and interested in becoming more so and helping others around us become more so. And so, in a sense, we're an organization of leaders, and certainly within our society. So together, we lead. Thanks for listening. For other leadership in BPW video tutorials and recorded webinars, you can see our channel, which if you're watching this video, you're already on it. And here's the address. You can join us for our live webinars, which happen once a month on the second Wednesday of each month. And here's an address, a Facebook page for which you can get more information about that and the upcoming schedule. And by email for contact. Thanks so much for listening. Hope to see you all very soon. Bye for now.